And I thought to myself, I mean, what does Hashem want from me? You know? And when he told me that, I thought, why is he telling it to me? Why? Why did he take his time out and come over to me and say it?
There we go. It's the Purim episode. But as you probably just heard or saw, this is some serious moments in this Purim episode with Mendy Pellin, because we just went head first into this conversation. Mendy is someone that has been one of the biggest media producers when it comes to Jewish content and just content around the world. And I asked him some hard-hitting questions, but we also spoke about the essence of Purim. You'll hear how fun this conversation is, how deep some points are, and stick around for the end for a revealing moment that we've all been waiting for. This episode is in memory of Shimon David ben Yaakov Shlomo, as well as Miriam Sarah bas Yaakov Moshe, as well as Simcha Beryl David Olav Shalom ben Avram Moshe. This episode is powered by the TANNAIM series, an incredible books, I should say, that you heard me talk about. It is also powered by the wonderful Simcha Time, which you can hear more about, and it is also powered by the Unrestricted Podcast. Here is my conversation with Mendy. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. Here we are with Mendy Pellin or Pellin? I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Pellin.
How many people call you Pellin?
Mainly Israelis.
Pellin.
Or Felin.
Like
you know.
Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
So you were just saying before, and I'm like, okay, maybe let's include this, that I owe a big thank you for doing this, because you don't really do that many podcasts.
Yes.
What's the reason behind that?
I think just the expectation of a comedian coming onto a podcast is, people are let down when it's just not an hour of nonstop laughter.
Right.
So, I think there's only what to lose going on a podcast.
Interesting. Hello. So what changed over here?
I love your energy.
Thank you.
I think
That's
it's
so nice
like,
of you.
I just wanted to fabring with you.
Wow.
You
And we happen to have the mics on.
Yeah, exactly.
I really appreciate that. It's funny. My friend Mayor Commonson said that.
That is like, I shouldn't, out of everyone, know to shut my phone. You know what I'm saying?
It's all good.
Yeah.
But I'll put my phone on. I think I also forgot to put it in airplane mode. But my friend Mayor Commonson mentioned a similar thing. He was, and still is, not as much, but like bar mitzvah motivator and just tons of energy. And people are like, we want to have you for Shabbos. And he's like, I'm not always like this, like 24/7. So probably as a comedian, you probably get that also. Like you're buying pizza and they're like, be funny.
Yes. There's a lot of, literally people come over to me like, be funny. Or say something funny. Tell me a joke, like as if you put in a quarter,
right?
And the joke's going to come out.
Perform monkey.
You're not always on.
Right.
There was a Pesach program that hired me, and that year I did not want to go to a Pesach program. I just wanted to be with the family at home, and so what I usually do is I just make an unreasonable request instead of saying no. So
smart.
Yeah. So I told him, listen, I want to be with the whole family. The only way we can make it work is if I bring my family with me. I'm like, that's fine. I'm like, well, I mean, my family means all my in-laws, my brother-in-laws, my sister-in-laws. And surprisingly, they're like, fine.
Wow.
Yeah. For one night performing on Klal Yisrael. And we were the largest table. We had over 30 people at this table in the hotel. But I think that they expected me to be like this wild energy ball going around from table to table, just bringing. But I wanted to spend time with the family. It was like, this is like I'm off duty here.
Did they call you back next year?
No. It was not a worthy investment on their behalf.
Right. But your family enjoyed it.
It was amazing.
Right.
It was one of these big 5-star,
I'm curious, because that's really like a crazy request, honestly, and like how that you actually got it. But imagine it was like more outlandish. Imagine you're like, I have this thing with elephants. I really like elephants. There's got to be an elephant there one day. And like all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think the more, it's sad, but a lot of times you have to make requests to get respect. You know, like there's certain times where I learned the hard way of doing either free gigs or telling them like, oh, I know you have a tight budget. I'll stay in your house. You know, that's fine. And I've learned the hard way that unfortunately a lot of people just put you on a really bad couch that you pay for your back for the next month, or you know, or one organization said, like I call them the day of the event. I prepared. I even turned down other gigs, and I call them the day of. Like, what time do you want me at the hall? And they're like, oh, we went in another direction. Like they didn't bother because the cause was so dear to me that I decided that's it. I'm going to donate my time. So I think because it was free, they didn't bother picking up the phone.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess so you're saying like when you put in some request for value, then people associate a lot more. And then like when you sometimes just try to be nice and just give it, then they just associate it as like, well, we could pay that person a lot of money, so they're probably more worth it.
It's twisted. The more I charge, the more respect and the more I get.
I'm thinking I should have asked you to do this and offered to pay, or you should have asked me to do. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out. Okay, but you're doing it, so that's
I'm
what
doing
counts.
it. I'm doing it.
What was your yeshiva experience like? Were you the like classic goody or troublemaker?
Gosh, Mendy.
Oh wow! I love this. I love
Legend.
It. Yes.
Sorry, middle of the episode. Oh my gosh.
For those listening,
You tell me.
Oh, you smell
I
good.
just got a haircut.
What?
Tell me nothing. Who's next? Trump? Who's coming?
I just want to tell you, today, this man is having his first live
That's right.
kosher
Mendy,
money event,
when we put
right?
this out, the event will have happened already.
Okay,
This is not live,
this man
Mendy.
had his first.
We hope.
Yeah.
Mendy, it's great to see you.
It's good to see you, brother.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, do your thing.
Yeah, okay.
He was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. You were on the cover of the Wall Street
Forget
Journal?
about the Wall Street Journal, Ami magazine.
Oh, that too, right, for sure. We'll get back to the Wall Street Journal, but
you never know what's going to come out of that door. I love that.
Yeah.
That's called living.
This is the perm episode where like the unexpected happens. But yeah, so yeshiva. What were you like in yeshiva?
Yeshiva was, put it this way, okay? I was on the subway, on the way to Mifsaim. Mifsaim is like going out to do some outreach.
Is that a Chabad word?
A Chabad work, Mifsaim. Outreach is not a Chabad word.
That's not, but Mifsaim I am not familiar with at all.
Mifsaim, we gotta do Mifsaim.
Oh, you do Mifsaim?
Mifsaim, we gotta do Mifsaim, yeah. So, as even as kids, we had our Friday route where we had the Jews that you'd go to bug them, put on tefillin, give them l'chaims and stuff like that. So going on the subway, this guy gets up and he gives the, it's the regular subway setting, and he gives his speech how, I'm not the real Jew, and with all these different quotes of, as it says here and it says there, and he brings all these quotes, which I don't remember learning in yeshiva. And I felt like I should respond. That's what I do. And so I get up there and I'm trying to think, like, what is a pasuk that I could tell him? What's some pasuk that I could tell him? What's some pasuk? And the only like pasuk that I could think of, I get up there and I'm like, sir, it says in Isaiah 25:17, the path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquity of the selfish and the tyranny. Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill separates the weak from the valley of darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of all lost beings. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger to all those who attempt to poison and destroy my brother. For you know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee. And he's like, you got a good point. But that's from a movie that I snuck out of school and I went to, and I remember it from the movie.
Wow.
But in yeshiva, I think that yeshivas have definitely evolved, but I had this allergy. Like once you start saying like, okay, it says in this week's Chumash that suddenly like there's an off switch. Mm-hmm. Once you start getting into the Jewy thing, it's like the association, because of the way it was taught in a very rigid way, it became like I was not open to listening to it. I only really learned about Judaism once I get older and out of yeshiva. But in yeshiva, I didn't really learn anything.
You didn't learn anything?
No.
So were you like pulling pranks all day?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And back in the day, you paid for it. I mean, you know, like there was corporal punishment back in the day.
Right.
So I had to make that calculation. Like this is a great joke opportunity, but I'm gonna go for it. It's worth a slap.
But kudos to you that I think so many people, and I don't know how extreme your upbringing was, that there was friction or just difficulties, but like kudos to you that you didn't go through it and then say like, I had enough of that. Like it didn't work out for me and I'll find my own path in my own way. You've definitely forged your life in a way that Yiddishkeit is a very big part of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, thank God within Chabad, there's a lot of flexibility to be yourself. And I'm not saying that in other Hasidic or other Jewish groups you can't, but I know from what, I can just talk about from my experience. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I had a lot of wiggle room to really explore and outlets for my creativity. And a lot of the foundation, like in Hasidus, in Kabbalistic teachings, where it takes you behind the curtain of like, why are we doing all this funny stuff? Mm-hmm. It kind of took it away from the part of the brain of fear, like you got to do this or else your shadchanim are not going to work out, right. Or like you must point inside or else you're out of the like that fear part of like getting in line to like, wait a second, all these are in place to get you closer to your source, mm-hmm. To bring light down to this world. Like once you look behind the scenes, like what it's all about, so I had these tools in my backyard. We didn't really learn it properly growing up because it was literally like, don't come back to class until you memorize V'nefesh Hashem Yisrael Hi Chelik Lekami Mal Mamish 100 times and write it down. And
right.
Like it was like they took this beautiful thing and just made it this burden.
I hear that. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of. There has been thank God, a lot of improvements in like, the system.
Oh yeah.
But, I kind of look at it like the Chumash, like when you learn the story of like, whatever it is, it could be like Noach and the Teva and the world then. And like when you're in like third grade learning about it, it's like, it's nice. It's a story. But like, as you get older, you're like understanding like, oh, society was like that and the lessons that come out, and like a 5-year-old learning that story or whatever that parsha, and then a 15-year-old learning that parsha is like very different. Then a 30-year-old is very different. And like, it's the way like looking at the Torah similarly, I think it could be also looked at like sometimes with just chinuch or the system, like, hey, growing up a certain way, it was in some ways for some people negative and some people positive, but like as you get older, you're like, wait a second, it doesn't mean like because I had a negative influence doesn't mean there's a negativity to the Torah or Hashem. No, it just happens to be that person that time was, for whatever reason, not sure exactly how they got into the position that they were in, but they weren't the right person to really give over, to spark that love for Yiddishkeit that really they should be doing.
Yeah, no, a lot of times like trauma gets embedded into the religion. So therefore, you want to throw out the trauma, so you throw out everything that it's connected to. So
Right.
there's definitely a lot of that. But I think, we definitely have the truth, the answers, and Noach was a big tzaddik.
Right,
From his fisalet to his kepelet.
So I recently interviewed someone that was, I think, your counselor, Yitzi Horowitz.
Wow.
Was he your counselor?
He was my counselor, yeah.
Okay. Could you tell us about your relationship with Yitzi?
Wow. So Yitzi, bringing up Yitzi is very good for this. If this is a Purim, this is the Purim episode.
This
or
is
whatever.
the Purim episode.
The Purim episode,
which we are very heavy with the Purim, but we'll tie it in how it makes sense.
Yeah. Here. So let's take it a step back. Let's talk about Purim.
Okay.
Okay. And then we'll take it into Yitzi. Okay.
Love it.
So I look at Purim. Let's even take it a step back from Purim.
Okay.
Let's talk about what is our purpose in this world.
Oh my gosh.
What are we doing here?
You should be making more jokes. Stop talking about purpose. What's going on over here?
This is a living l'chaim.
Right.
Yeah. So, we were tasked as Yidden to come down to this world and be a light unto the nations. Bring light to the nations, and it's really tough. We have our energy, which is our neshama, is there in this body, and the body is really equipped to help fulfill that mission. The problem is we get sucked into into the craziness, the CNN, the fake news, the failing New York Times, Disney, all these different things that are there. There's darkness. There's so much darkness that is trying to fight with the light. So there are different little things to kind of remind your brain what your purpose is, so you don't get so sucked into this physical world. And that's where comedy comes in. Comedy is, you have a certain, serious beat, and then suddenly there's a fluctuation, and then you start laughing at the everyday, and then you realize, what, this is ridiculous. This is nuts. Why are we doing this? And then it's kind of, sends you, it's like a little crumb that's sent to you to remind you to wake up, to be woke, but real woke, not the woke that's really sleeping. Purim, I look at as the comedy holiday that comes around that reminds you to that what we're here for. So to remind you not take yourself so seriously, because we are just trying to play this game in order to bring light to this physical world. So talking about that, so that's Purim. Now we're segueing into Yitzi Horowitz.
Sure, yeah.
So Yitzi Horowitz is that kind of guy. He was. I remember he used to come over to my neighbor's house from Malava Malka. He'd run around with his guitar, and he was a wild one. And one time in camp, when he was my counselor, they had these mattresses the size of pancakes, So if you wanted to have a decent night's sleep, you need 2 of those pancakes to sleep on. And not everyone was lucky enough to find a second one. But I was lucky enough, but someone stole my pancake. And I was devastated. I came into the room, and I was like, and I, Yitzi was there, and I was just about to break down in tears, and then I would have been embarrassed in front of all my friends, whatever. And I think he caught on to that. And so he just flicked a switch, and he jumped up, and he just started hopping around like a monkey from bed to bed, from bunk bed to bunk bed. And he was just it was impossible to be upset. You know, like he just decided I gotta do something radical here just to switch the channels to remind us like not to take ourselves so seriously. So years later, when he was in the ICU, and I was visiting him, I decided to repay the favor. You know, so I apologized to him first. And just in case he would feel a little awkward, but I'm sure he appreciated it. And I just started jumping around on the beds and the chairs, and I just started going nuts like a monkey in the ICU. And like the nurses are looking at me and like, do you want me to take this guy out of here? Yeah.
That's a nice time. It's a nice time to repay the favor.
Yeah.
Do you have like, I guess, a model of how you approach the balance of like being a filmmaker, but also being like a yid, like those two worlds? So, I mean, it you know, like when I went to LA and I got all serious into film, I decided like I'm keeping it separate, you know, but as my Rosh Yeshiva said, you know, once you're go to Lubavitch Yeshiva, you're screwed for life, you know. And there was like this one time where I was at a film set, a big like Paramount, I think. I was working on the set, and I brought my tefillin there because we had to get there before sunrise, and so I had to, you know, find a little break to wrap up. But I was like, you know, I am not gonna mix things. You know, like the tefillin's there, that's fine. But let me tell you a little secret about Lubavitchers, okay? I don't know if I could talk about this, but we're a little one-track minded. You know, we could act nice, we could talk nice, we could manipulate, but we're just trying to get into your sleeve. You know, right.
That's our mission. It's like, so if I'm on a film set and I meet a Goldberg and a Shapiro and a Cohen and whatever, and I'm looking at their sleeves, I'm looking at their arms that have no marks on it. It's like it's very hard to pay attention to anything with these. There's just sleeves that could be rolled up. I could get into these sleeves, you know? So, but I was like, Mendy, self-control. Self-control.
You're here for business.
Yes, you're here for business. Like, you don't want to get that name that, you know, that it literally costs several $1 million an hour to film. And it's like, when you're paying that amount of money, you need everyone to fall in line, or else it costs money every time you wait. It's just this huge production. We had a few hundred extras over there it was this huge thing. Anyway, it was getting later on in the day. The sun was slowly, you know, getting to the sunset time, and I'm looking at the sleeves, and I'm looking at the sunset, and I'm like, Mendy, control yourself. So I was like, okay, let me just ask. Let me just see if, you know, there's one guy, the production, the set director, you know, like I was like, are you Jewish by any sense? He's like, oh, my mother was Jewish. I was like, oh, wow, okay. Oh, very nice. I was like, you ever put on tefillin before? He's like, no. I was like, oh my gosh. Because in Lubavitch, if you put tefillin on someone for the first time, that person's called a karkafta.
What does that mean?
A karkafta.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah,
a karkafta. A karkafta.
The person's a karkafta, or you're a karkafta?
No, the person's a karkafta. I always feel like a karkafta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
So if the person never wore tefillin, then all of a sudden the desire to put on tefillin for them is even like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
Never in their life you could be the first person to put tefillin on them.
Yeah, because if I come back to Crown Heights to headquarters, like everyone, holds me up and I crowd surf in 770. They put my name on like employee of the week. Like I got a karkafta. Like that's a huge deal. So it just made that desire to get into this guy's sleeve so much more, and so I lost it. I was like, okay, all right. And I was like, all right, Shapiro, let's put on tefillin right now. And he's like, we got a set going on here. We can't do that. And I was like, but the sun's going down. I got to wrap you up. And he didn't want to do it. It took a couple times. I tried different angles, and then I was like, how many? When the first time you put on tefillin, that's your bar mitzvah. How many people are going to say they had Brad Pitt at their bar mitzvah?
Was Brad Pitt really there?
He was there. He was right there. Wow. Yeah. And and then he's like, he rolled up his sleeve right there. And yeah. And then I went around, wrapping up other people. And
So you went for it. I
went for it. But yeah, you can't, I think whatever you do, you just, you can't fight it. You got to remember that, you light unto the nations,
That's very nice. We'll be right back to this week's episode, but I am first so proud to tell you about one of my favorite books. Growing up, I read a lot of Tintin. I love Tintin. Tintin was great. I also read a lot of Torah and good books and Svarim about Gedolim. Imagine they fused together those two worlds. Not a book about Rev Tintin, but imagine they told over the story of Gedolim and how they formed and who they were, or TANNAIM informed who they were in a comic form. This is the perfect gift for any child. It's a perfect gift for me, and that's why I'm so proud that I have so many volumes of the TANNAIM series. And let me tell you a little more about them. So this episode is brought to you by the TANNAIM series, published by Feldheim, of course, the best. TANNAIM series takes you back to the time of the Mishnah, where you'll meet some of the greatest scholars and teachers in Klal Yisrael, like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Reb Nachum Ish Kamzu, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Reb Meir Balanes, and so many more. There are so many of their books available. They have a bunch new ones, and this is why I'm telling you about them. And it's just great storytelling with a lively comic book format that creates a learning experience that will inform, delight, and inspire children of all ages. And it includes full Gemara sources in the back of each volume. So you're like, wait a second, is this real? Boom, you could fact check it. On any order of 5 or more of the TANNAIM series books, you could use the magical code LL20, that's LL20, the coupon code at checkout, plus they'll give you free shipping. So you use LL20 gives you 20% off, plus you get free shipping on those $5. So go ahead and look in our show notes and you'll get it. Yeah, I don't have the new ones yet, but you will see on screen. We're going to include some pictures of the new ones. We eat it up in the Langer house, and I'm excited. Reb Chanina ben Dosa, got Reb Yishmael ben Elisha, Onkelos the Ger. I have in front of me Hillel Zucken. These are gems. I think they need to start the Amoraim series. TANNAIM series is not enough for me. I need more of these. But straight up, I know something's good when I have this book in the studio. My brother Eli walks in and he's like, "Where'd you get that?" I said, "Felt." And he's like, "I need that for my kids." Boom, ordered it on the spot. He picked it up, flipped through it. He's like, "This is incredible." So we want you to have the incredibleness as well. Use code LL20 for 20% off plus free shipping when you buy 5 or more in the show notes. Now back to my conversation with Mendy. Is there a project, you've worked on so many projects, is there a project that you're most proud of from what you've produced or made or been involved in?
Well, there's a lot of projects that I'm most proud of. One of them would have to be like I did a series of music videos for Yaakov Shweki, and so those definitely it was not like his first music video, and my first music video that I ever made. like, I don't know how he trusted me to do this. He didn't want to make, he was not into making music videos. He didn't want to make music videos. And we were working on a one of these rich people's bar mitzvahs where they hired Yossi Green to write a song, Yaakov Shweki to sing it, and me to make a video,
You're like, the one condition is my whole family has to make it.
Oh yeah. It was like one of these things where the guy paid me by going to the safe and pulling out like thousands of dollars in cash.
Wow.
These gigs happen. There's a lot of these gigs that happen you don't hear about. So I think he was very impressed with the way I handled the production, and he felt like if he's going to do his first music video, he wanted to be with me. And so we went to Israel, did Cry No More. And looking into getting permits for we filmed in the old city by the ruins. We had this thing, and I had this theory that instead of getting permits, let's get generators and lights. Because when people see it, they're going to be like, who in their right mind has this huge crew with a crane and everything if they don't have a permit? So I figure we either have to go big or go home.
Gosh. Yeah.
So I set up these lights. We had this really loud generator going. We had a crane. We had a full staff there. And I remember, Yaakov leaning over to me like, you got permits for all this. And I was like, you think I would do this without permits? Yeah. Years later, he jokes around, he jokes about it like he knew that I just went, I think he appreciated the fact.
But thank God they didn't stop you.
They didn't stop me.
Because they probably said the same thing. They're like, who in their right mind? For sure have the permits.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to go straight up.
Right.
You got to go
That's very funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so something that you are amazing at is stand-up comedy, which you don't really have too many from Jews doing that. What's that like?
Stand-up comedy is amazing when it's a good show. You definitely have a good show and not so good shows, but it was something that I was avoiding for a long time because I didn't want to. I was making videos, I was doing a lot of sketch comedy, but I didn't want to. I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of I'm a comedian, I could do comedy, but then if I actually do it and I'm not good at it, then it's like, oh man, then my whole identity is like, so I was avoiding doing like pure straight up stand up until this Satmar guy came along, and he's like, Mendy, let's make a show. Let's make a show. And he's like, I'll produce it. Don't worry. That's it. You're going to do great. And he booked the theater, I think it was the King's Theater. It was like this big theater in Brooklyn. And when I came to Brooklyn to do the show, I saw like billboards and bus stops where he put signs all over, like 2 hours of nonstop laughter.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? 2 hours? Like I prepared like 45 minutes, to an hour. And I also thought you were going to get some openers. He's like, no, just you.
Oh gosh.
So I jumped in the deep for that show. And right before I went on stage, I guess because of the English a little lost in translation, he didn't understand the different terminologies. He comes over to me before you come on stage, come here. He's like, Mendy, I'm telling you, you're gonna bomb. Trust me, you're gonna bomb. And that was like, then I had to run onto stage.
Oh gosh. He's trying to give you a little more material right before.
I think so. In hindsight, that's probably what it was.
How'd it go?
It was amazing. I mean, it was very long. It was more than 2 hours, actually. I think that's like a rookie's mistake is like you feel like you got to give more than less. But yeah, it was amazing.
It's so interesting. I think you're saying like it's a nice story, but it's also like there is a lot of like impact here. The fact that so many times people in their lives, we run away from the things that we really feel like we're supposed to be doing, but if we fail at that, like you said, like then who am I? So we don't even do it. So then people go their entire life just avoiding what they're created for, what their purpose is, because maybe they won't do a good enough job. And which is a very sad reality, because then we'll never be able to hit our point.
Yeah, you fail. Everything you don't do, you fail at. By default, it's a failure. So may as well just try it out, because then you may have some success.
Right. And you know what? If not, let's say even if you fail, okay, then that wasn't meant for you. You know, like thank God you did well there and that was your thing. And if you did terribly, then, you know, I could be interviewing Mendy Pellin, the construction worker.
Yeah.
You know,
which would have been fine.
Yeah.
You got to
nice
try it.
houses.
Like when I want to do like Jubelish, and I
have no clue what you're talking about.
Oh, Jubelish is a
Is it like a candy?
So it's a comedy brand that I decided to try something a little different angle, but I needed an investor so that we can do it correctly, and we could get an office and we could get a studio and everything like that. So I went to go meet with a potential investor, and you know, we're talking for like 15 minutes. And he's like, why is there somebody snapping pictures while we're talking? Because I came in with a photographer. Because I figured he probably has, you know, this is one of these guys that, you know, like he sold his company for $100 million plus, and he's still a CEO, you know, and owns like 40%. And he has people pitching to him all day. So I figured I got to break, like he expects anything I tell him, he's going to expect. So I got to do something a little bit different. And I thought of bringing a photographer.
Did it work out? So
after a little while, and a guy's like just walking around the room snapping pictures. He's like, what's with the photographer? I was like, listen, this is where something big is being born. I want to capture this, you know? And he opened up his wallet, you know?
We'll be right back to this week's episode. But first, let's talk a little about Simcha Belsky and how he changed the world and continues to change the world. Olav Shalom. So Simcha Belsky is this person that believed in this idea that if I could help someone, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Doesn't make a difference whether it's convenient for me or not. How many times in our life we're like, I want to do a favor for someone. I want to do a chesed, but it's not convenient. It's so easy when it's convenient for us, and you should still do it when it's convenient. But the goal of what I'm talking about right now is to be like Simcha, Olav Shalom, and say, you know what? It's inconvenient for me. It's out of my way, but I'll be active and I'll go ahead and I'll pursue a chesed, because that's why we are here. It's one of the reasons we're here on this world, to help others. And ultimately, it brings us to this feeling of, unironically being called Simcha, this feeling of happiness. And so I want you to go ahead and consciously make a decision, say, this week, I'm going to perform an act of kindness that's out of my way. And I've been doing it, and I've been doing it for a few weeks now, and it's a game changer. But it's nice to do it. But you know what? You walk in the street and you see a nice, beautiful name on a nice big yeshiva, and you're like, wow, that's so great that they put it there for a reason. Because you know what? This person went ahead and someone in the family donated this, say, we love Torah, we support Torah. What a beautiful idea to go ahead and take this and say, I did a chesed, let me promote it. I mean, you can promote it on your social media if you want, you could do that. But to go ahead on your Shabbos table and say, guys, girls, it's Simcha time now. We just said a nice Dvar Torah. We said that funny story that happened to us. We passed the soup and the croutons. But now it's time to give each other an opportunity to say what chesed we did and what Simcha time we did. So we call it Simcha time. Go around and saying, what chesed did we do that brought Simcha for someone else? How did we go out of our way to make someone else put a smile on their face. To put a smile on someone else's face? I don't even know how the phrase works. But either way, that's the goal. Go ahead, do the extra chesed, bring out that simcha time and Shabbos table. And now, back to our conversation. And hold on. Before, you could submit your simcha time at simchatime.org in the show notes. Tell the folks there at Simcha Time what you've done. And now back to my conversation with Mendy. You seem to have like a lot of these like little life hack tricks that kind of like with the Shreki thing, like, oh yeah, we'll just go very big, or like this guy, like get a photographer, then they'll realize how significant this could be. There's no follow-up question there.
There's no follow-up. No, I've always been into, well, whether it's marketing, trying to like dial into the person or the audience. And I mean, that's what comedy is. It's more listening than talking. You have to really dial into the audience or else it's going to be a horrible show. The best shows is when I'm not there. I just kind of dial into the crowd and I go on vacation.
You like feed off their energy.
And it's just like we're just a bunch of people having a good time, Is there like a favorite bit in like the From world that you like to like do or perform? I got some stuff I had to retire because of the wokeness has seeped into the From world, unfortunately. But like for example with shadchanim, a lot of people ask me, how do you know it's the right one? How do you know? It's simple. It's like throwing up. You just know. There's nausea, but that feeling that makes you go to the bathroom and barf your brains out, that's love.
It's very good. Yeah. It's very good.
There's a little tip in shadchanim,
It's very good. I think all the single people listening to this will be like, that's what I needed. That's what I needed. So there's something I want to talk to you about. This actually just came up right before we started talking. I knew you were working on something. I didn't realize that it was going to be ready so soon. But you're coming out with a podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell us, I guess, the name of it and just a macro understanding of what it is?
So the podcast, I have my hands in a lot of different things. I have a lot of my hands and stuff. Some stuff about that that I can't really talk about, and then there's different other projects. Some are serious, some are funny, and so I decided to make a podcast about things that I'm passionate about. And some things will be funny, some things will be the angle is some subjects only a comedian should handle. It's too hard for just non-comedians.
What's the name of it?
The name of the podcast is called No Joke with Mendy Pellin.
So like what are like the subjects that you're...
So the first subject I decided it's like at a crime at a mass casualty site, you have to like try to I forgot the fancy name, but I'm not a Hatzalah guy, but you have to realize like who you're going to treat first and whatever. So one thing I think and this is a cause that I've been helping behind the scenes a lot is abuse in the From community. So at a comedy show, I had an abuser. I'm not going to get into the details. It's a perm episode. He was sitting right in the front center, laughing just a little bit louder than everyone else. And it was bugging me that he was just sitting there and no one was saying anything. So I spoke to him afterwards, and he said there's not many adult events that he could go to. There's yeshivas that most events are in yeshivas. And he legally could not go to any place that holds kids. So he's like, this is a neutral venue. So I said, let me ask you a question. Would you mind having an interview, so we can get inside your head? so we can learn from you how to protect our kids.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know what I thought about that. I was just like,
and he said, yeah, or it was like,
and he was a little hesitant. But he went for it. So, I mean, it's condensed down, but I sat down with him for like 6 hours.
Wow. It's condensed to like 5 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It was not easy. But it's very raw, and he was way more open than I expected. And then I realized people will need some counseling after they hear the first episode.
Right.
So the second episode is a psychiatrist that works in that field, that gives his assessment on the first episode, and then the third episode is a woman named Patty Fitzgerald, who goes around to schools, parents, and also to kids to educate them on how to stay safe.
Very fascinating. Do people look at you and say like, wait a second, you're the joke man? How could you be dealing with something so serious? And I'm sure this has come up with other things that you've done where they're just like, no, comedy, like something so serious like this that obviously needs some form of change. Is that a contradiction, or ultimately does it really flow in one another?
I think that, like I was saying before about comedians, have this thing of like, the reason why I think there's so many Jewish comedians is because I think comedians and artists, singers, different artists they kind of trigger something that's to throw off the everyday. So there's this kind of force that an artist could dial into, a comedian could dial into, and see a lot of things that, let's say someone on the everyday just is not aware of, and or thinks about things. And yes, there is that truth about comedians having having their struggles. A lot of it comes from different struggles, and it brings a certain awareness, and they understand there's a certain empathy. And so because it's hard to see a need and hard to see pain and just completely laugh about it. Laughing about it could make it palatable to present to someone, to bring awareness to. But sometimes I just go in the other direction to help out.
That's really beautiful. We'll be right back to this week's conversation, and I'm telling you, stick around because the last 10 minutes of this episode blows my mind. But first, I need to tell you about another podcast that you should be listening to or watching. Well, I think you can only listen to it, but maybe watch soon. Unrestricted Podcast. Yes, Steve Savitsky is the former president of the OU. Yes, the OU. And he is no longer the president. And he's talking to people that have been in a position of tremendous power and tremendous influence, and they are no longer in that position. They're retired, they've moved on to different positions, different roles, and he sits down with them to ask the questions that you want to hear. One of the makeup for making a great podcast is getting people to share their real answers. And so often people are so guarded. They're in a position where they can't really share. They can't really say that and this and that. When this mic goes off, there's so many nuggets that people say that I'm like, I wish you would have said that. And they say, I can't. My hands are tied. I can't really say it. Steve gets to the bottom of it because these people's hands are not tied. He has 3 episodes out so far, and I'm going to go through each of them very quickly. Past episode was with Michal Cutler-Wunsch, who is a former member of the Knesset, and she talks about her battle with online Semitism. Really well spoken, very interesting. He interviewed Richard Joel, former president of Yeshiva University, and he talks about life after presidency and what his role was and what he did for Yeshiva University, as well as his first episode with Amos Yadlin, who was a fighter pilot in the Yom Kippur War. And he talks about the U.S. and Israel relationships and mentions how like the U.S. and Israel, like Israel's only true friend is the U.S. And Steve is a great podcast host. He's easy to listen to, and I highly recommend them. So go ahead and listen to them. Link in the show notes. Now back to this week's episode. Towards the end of my interviews, I like to ask what I deem as fun questions. First question is, Out of the 613 mitzvahs, do you have a favorite mitzvah?
Wow. Ooh, whoa. Wow, I did not see this one coming.
Okay.
You know. My favorite mitzvah is sending away the bird.
The mother bird.
The mother bird, so you could, because there's just so much material in that.
Right.
You know? And it's like it's a reminder of like this doesn't make any sense, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like it's there. It's a ritual that's implanted in there to remind everyone that this is all kind of fake, you know.
It sounds like you're saying Yiddishkeit is not real.
No, I'm saying the world. I'm saying like
got it.
This is like there's a higher purpose,
right,
beyond logic.
Right, exactly, right. There's so many mitzvahs that are so logical.
Yeah.
This one is clearly saying, if you think you figured it out, you haven't figured it out, and Hashem has it figured out. So send away the mother bird.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Pretty dark.
No, but it's also a very thoughtful answer. It's a very thoughtful answer. If there's one person in history that you could, or no longer with us, that you could spend an hour with, who would it be?
It would probably be the Arizal.
Arizal.
Yeah.
Why the Arizal?
I went when I spent time in Sfat, and like I went to the Arizal's mikvah, his shul, and just his teachings. Like he's someone that he really seems like somebody that I would love to sit down and have a conversation with.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Worst advice is, I think that don't listen to, like, you have to ask a professional. You have to ask someone that has a college degree how to do something, like don't get
you're like, do you need heart surgery? You're like, we don't need to ask the professional.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. What were you saying? I interrupted you.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I'm saying there's certain things that, like you just trust your gut,
Right.
Like you don't have to ask a professional for everything. I mean, I guess also something that I regret is I took a medication years ago for my IBD, ulcerative colitis. It's like Crohn's. I don't know if you're familiar with these things. And the advice, I looked at the side effects, and it said it could like mess up your bones and all this stuff. And I got an advice of like, hey, that's just for the lawyers. Don't read this stuff. And it wound up happening. I had to have surgery.
Oh, no way.
And
oh man.
And everything.
That's
yeah.
Pretty bad
I had to
advice.
put in some time. I spent, I think, about a year in a wheelchair.
Really?
From that experience, yeah. Because I had to do both hips.
That's terrible.
One after another, yeah.
I mean, you walked in here, so I'm glad things have healed somewhat.
Thank God.
Are you back to yourself, or it's still affecting you?
I still have Altabena, syndrome.
Right.
No, but mostly on most days, it's good.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the last time that someone did like a chesed for you? We have a new segment with in memory of Simcha Belsky, who was someone who always did random chesadim for people.
It's interesting. That's a good segue from what we were just talking about.
Okay.
So the first time that I left my house, on a big trip, and I was like nervous. The doctor did like this graft, so it took 6 months till the graft like grew in, instead of doing like a hip replacement. So I had to be very careful. I couldn't fly. So my friend drove me to a guest that you had on this, Chaim Danziger.
Yeah.
Rabbi
Sure.
Rabbi Danziger.
Yeah.
So
Rostov Rabbi.
Yeah. So we go way back, and I did not want to miss his wedding. So I was like, I'm going to make this trip to his wedding, So I got out of bed. I got help from my friends. I went into the back seat, put my feet up, with all the pillows to try to get all comfortable in the right area. And we went to his wedding. And then I didn't want to make like a scene or anything. So I was like, put the, I asked my friend to wheel me over to a seat. I sat in a seat before the chuppah, and they put the wheelchair away somewhere, And then it came time to read the Lubavitcher Rebbe's letter. And there's a custom. Everyone stands up for the letter. So everyone stood up, and then I'm right in the front center, just sitting, So naturally, God bless the nature of people. I got some, very serious, stern looks, and then I got some people that started like, no, that happened. Stand up. What's going on there? And pretty quickly, there's someone that I did a camp with in the Ukraine. His name's Rabbi Akiva Romanovsky. So we did a camp together with Rabbi Danziger. And he lives, breathes, talk, like the Rebbe is like everything he thinks about what the Rebbe would say. He's like on a whole nother level, really dialed into the Rebbe. Like it's his life. But he saw, I'm sitting there, people are shunning me, and he made a split decision to just sit down next to me. So that I wouldn't feel like, I wouldn't feel alone, and that was like a simple act that I'll definitely never forget that. That was, and then, people were knowing both of us. People were, but he didn't want me to be alone because he knew, and,
I think, maybe I don't know the Rebbe so well, but I feel like the Rebbe would have wanted him
that's the thing.
Do it,
I think a lot of people get so caught up in Yiddishkeit. Forget about Chabad, Rebbe, this, that, just in general in Yiddishkeit. A lot of people get caught up in the, in the cream, in the different practices, to the different fences to help you avoid this or whatever, that they forget like the essence of it.
Right.
But a real chassid, a real, someone that's really practicing, dials in, doesn't forget that essence. And, he did not forget the essence.
That's really nice. Okay. Yeah. So, I feel like you could have answered my next question with that beautiful story. What's a story that inspires you? Either it happened to you or you've heard it and you're like, wow, that actually gives me a lot of chizuk.
Let's think. A story that inspires, that gives me chizuk.
Yeah.
So I heard this story from Rabbi Moshe Brisky in Agoura Hills, California, and I'm going to butcher it.
Okay.
And I don't even think it's a real story, but I definitely. So there's this really poor guy that decided one day, at least for once in his life, he wants to feel like a rich man. So he saw a rich man start off his breakfast with a special mushroom omelet. With this, like you take it and the cheese like kind of like drips down and the mushrooms like steamy. So he's like, I am going to ask my wife to make a mushroom omelet. So he tells his wife, he's like, that's it. I am the man of the house. I want a mushroom omelet. And she was like, okay, I'll make you a mushroom omelet. The only problem is this particular recipe that you want requires a little bit of flour. We don't have any flour. He's like, I do it without flour. It's like, we don't have any mushrooms. Do it without mushrooms. We don't. We only have like one egg, but it's like an egg of a dove. You know, that's fine. So anyway, she cooks up what she has, puts it in front of him. He eats it and he starts laughing. He's like, I am not missing anything. You know, this is horrible. So that's an example that I think of, you know, in terms of Yiddishkeit. A lot of times you think you got a real taste of Yiddishkeit, and so therefore you think it's horrible, but maybe you didn't really have a mushroom omelet. You know, so it's something that's inspired me, not only in Yiddishkeit, and a lot of things in life, is like to always take a look and not just react to a situation that was negative, and just make a judgment like all those people that do this are bad. You know, like, no, I didn't get a real experience. You know, let's give it a second chance. Let's give it a third chance. Let's see. Let's try to get to the essence of it. So I don't know if that's too deep for a comedian to say.
You know what? I think if there's anyone who should be saying it, it is a comedian. So Mendy Pellin, thank you. I realized as we're finishing up, my brother literally came in, mentioned the Wall Street Journal. I didn't bring that up. I'm not sure. I don't even know, why were you in the Wall Street Journal? I
don't know why they put me
on
it.
You know.
But I made it on the cover of the Wall Street Journal at some point. And
that's cool.
And then I was like, I called my mother. I was like, Ma, go to the newsstand. There's a picture of me on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. And she's like, yeah, I read it. I'm like, so why don't you call? She's like, you know, it seems like a great opportunity to put a Dvar Torah in there. You know what I'm saying? Why, you know, like, maybe you should have said a Dvar Torah or something. Ma.
Amazing. Well, Mendy, thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you very much, Yaakov. Keep up the great spirit. You're definitely bringing a light onto the nations.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we're doing inspirations for the nations.
Yes, and it's and that's what Purim is all about, to remind us of, recalibrate us, to remind us that we are all supposed to bring light. That I thought to myself, I mean, what does Hashem want from me? You know? And when he told me that, I thought, why is he telling it to me? Why? Why did he take his time out and come over to me and say it? Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second. Let's take it. This is probably going to be the part you play at the beginning to tease the audience because I'm crying. Oh, Yaakov, how do you bring this out of people? How do you bring this side out of people?
Okay, so for those watching, we're at the end of the episode. You maybe waited the whole time to get to that point. We thought Mendy's idea was this would be a good teaser. We're still going with the bit. I look like the most evil person that I'm laughing.
Are we done? Are we done yet?
Yeah, we're done.
Oh, okay, good. All right, we're just...
you know, I have one concern, and we could even air this potentially, because now people are going to be like opening like the Purim episode, and like you're crying.
Yeah, because you got to turn it
on. That's what Purim's about.
That's what Purim's about.
Wow.
And by the way, you do this for all episodes. Like you film like this random teaser thing.
I don't know about
that.
And
then you go back.
and then we insert it in it.
Yeah.
That'd be genius.
All right. Wow.
Okay, good. Great fake crime. You should be in Hollywood more. Not just producing the stuff. You are.
Well, I'm close. Lakewood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. I know. Yes, we kind of set up that teaser. Mendy's idea. And when he told it to me, I'm like, I love it. He was here in the studio, literally just taking a straw and water and dipping it in his eyes. If you notice, you could go back and watch. If you watch that, there's water all over his shirt that I I found pretty funny. But I think it was great. I think this was such a good Purim episode, and if you're watching or listening to this any time of year, it's fine because who cares? Purim's every day, right? So the conversation was a mixture of so much comedy and like he was so naturally. I love that. Like it was just a natural. You got to see himself naturally funny, but there's such a deep and serious side to Mendy that I think so many times when it comes to comedians or just people that like. There's two sides to everyone, and I think sometimes we highlight one side and we forget about the other side of the person. So I was very happy to see both sides. So if you didn't yet get involved with this Simcha time, go around your Shabbos table. This is what we're all doing. This is what all the kids are doing these days. We're sharing the chesed we did of the week. So go ahead and try out Simcha time. It is wonderful. It's changing my life, and it will change yours. Go ahead and pick up the TANNAIM series. You could start with one of them. You could start with all of them. Literally, we had someone last week who was listening to one of the older episodes like, hey, I'm trying to use the promo code. The promo code is working. So go ahead, look in the show notes for your discount there. And look, okay, you finish this podcast. You're like, I'm feeling it. I want to hear another podcast. Go ahead and hear our friends at the Unrestricted Podcast. Again, the link is in the show notes. If you got this far in this podcast on YouTube, go ahead and leave in the comments the code word hilarious. That's the code word. If you don't know how to spell it, that's fine. You have spell check or spell it incorrectly. I'm fine with that. Mendy's fine with that. And we have so many incredible, fun, inspirational, deep shows on Inspiration for the Nation coming up. So go ahead and stick around. Go ahead and stick around. I don't even know what I'm saying. Enjoy Purim if you're celebrating Purim this week. And if you heard this and Purim already passed, get ready for the next Purim. It's going to be great. And so my friend Avi told me this line. I was very inspired by this episode. Until next time, l'chaim. Living l'chaim.